Welcome to the public scoping meeting for the Zenith Properties Building Demolition Application Environmental Impact Statement. This meeting is being recorded and will begin shortly. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the public meeting for the Zenith Properties Building Demolition Application Environmental Impact Statement. This is the second of two public scoping meetings. My name is Colleen Toomey, and I'm a member of the project consulting team supporting the city. Before we begin tonight's presentation, I would like to walk through a few important items. We have two segments in tonight's meeting. First, a short presentation. Second, a public comment period. To reduce background noise and make sure things run smoothly, all attendees will be muted during the presentation. We have about 45 people registered to attend tonight and currently 15 people registered to give public comment. That's starting with the name Anderson, ending with the last name Woods, and we will call on people alphabetically by last name. If you gave formal comment during scoping earlier in the spring, your comments were captured for the record. We will call, as I said, call on people alphabetically, so we just ask that you be ready to give comment, and we will conclude when the last person gives comment this evening. If you registered right before the meeting, that's okay. We will make sure everyone who would like to give 1 3-minute comment tonight has the opportunity to do so. Tonight, everyone is participating through the Zoom platform. Here are the key features that you need to know about. You can adjust the volume by clicking on the audio settings at the bottom left of your screen. Always try to turn up the volume first if you're having trouble hearing people. If you have a clarifying question about the SEPA process or EIS, we will have the question and answer period. So please submit those questions through the Q&A icon on your screen. If you would like to see the live transcript or use closed captioning, there's also that button toward the right. And other ways to join, if you would like to just call in, if you're not able to join on a computer platform, you can join by phone. That number is 253-215-8782. And use the webinar ID 864-8120-4126. And if you'll give me just a moment. Thank you. Finally, by participating in the event, you're consenting to being recorded in accordance with city law and public records practices. Any comments that are made will become public information, and all public disclosure rules and regulations apply. So again, we have two sections of the agenda, and we'll take a short break in between those two sections. We anticipate that the public comment process will begin somewhere around 6:30, 6:35. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Denise to start our presentation tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for participating in tonight's virtual scoping meeting for the Zenith Properties Environmental Impact Statement. My name's Denise Lathrop, and I am the Community Development Director and designated State Environmental Policy Act official for the City of Des Moines. As SEPA official, my role is to ensure that the State Environmental Policy Act process meets state requirements and that the EIS is thorough and accurate. The city has hired a team of experts led by environmental science associates that are assisting us with the EIS process. Tonight is an opportunity for you to provide comments on the scope of the EIS and for us to listen. While this will not be your only opportunity to comment, it is an important one. As Colleen had indicated, anyone who had previously commented during the May 3rd through June 2nd scoping period, those comments have been documented. Now I'd like to turn it over to Pam Zander from Environmental Science Associates, who will provide some background information on the proposal and walk you through the SEPA process.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad you could join us tonight to provide your comments on this project. My name is Pam Zander. I'm with Environmental Science Associates, and we're producing the environmental impact statement and designing the process for the city of Des Moines. I'll provide you with a bit of an overview. First, the applicant's proposal. We're here discussing a demolition permit application that was submitted to the city that they're considering. And it was submitted in September 2020. And the purpose is to demolish and remove the structures on the site. Next slide. Site history. This visual gives you a bit of a layout of the buildings on the site. You can see that it was built in 1926 and was used as a retirement home until closure in 2006. It was then used as an event center called Landmark on the Sound until 2014. And there have been a number of development proposals for the site that have not moved forward. It was purchased by Zenith Properties LLC in 2019 from the Freemasons, and it encompasses about 27 acres. Next slide, please. The current status is, as I mentioned, a demolition permit application was submitted. It was first submitted by the Freemasons in 2019 as part of the sale, and then Zenith resubmitted the application in September 2020. There have been a number of different designations for the site over time in terms of historic cultural significance. Next slide. And the objectives for the applicant, first, as we mentioned, to demolish existing structures on the property, remove the unsafe conditions, potential hazards, prevent further trespass, prevent further vandalism, and prevent further graffiti. So now we know what the proposal is, and I want to talk a little bit about what SEPA is, which stands for the State Environmental Policy Act. The citation here is from the Washington Administrative Code 19711, if you want to read more about what's required of SEPA. But I think the important thing to remember is it's not really a permit, it's a process. And that's why there are many people involved in this process. The information gathered during the process is going to be helpful to decision makers, and it also helps the public understand how this proposal may affect the environment. So the City of Des Moines is the lead agency, and they are going to make the decision regarding the demolition permit application after they've received all of the environmental review analysis. And they've determined that an environmental impact statement is required because they determined that there would likely be a significant adverse environmental impact resulting from the demolition of the structures. So now we ask what an EIS is. Well, environmental impact statement. And this is a document that's going to provide formal information to the public, to decision makers about the environmental effects of the plans or projects on the natural and built environment. So you're going to see sections on what the existing environmental conditions are in the document. You'll see what the alternatives are, and you'll see potential impacts and measures to reduce or mitigate any significant unavoidable adverse impacts. So here we have a graphic of what the process looks like. You can see on the far left that the initial application was submitted. And then there was a determination of significance, meaning that an EIS would be required. That was in May 2022. And then we're in the second of 2 comment periods. And you can see the red dot. That's where we are. And then it's not the only chance to comment on this project, because as we move forward and get the draft EIS ready, there'll be another public comment period where you can review all the documentation and then provide your comments on that as well. And then we have a final environmental impact statement after we review all the comments, and then a permit decision can be made after that. So tonight we're in a scoping meeting, and scoping is a term that's used in the State Environmental Policy Act to designate the first step in the environmental impact statement process. This is a time where we focus on, what the significant environmental issues might be, and we want to come up with reasonable alternatives to look at. Maybe some have a lesser environmental impact. We also want to look at potential mitigation measures that could reduce environmental impacts. These are all things that we're hoping that people will comment on. And then it's also meant to make sure everyone is notified that this project is going on. So right now, the city has decided that the main scoping will be for historic and cultural resources. So that'll be the focus. There are other issues that could be studied if there may be a potential significant adverse impact. And several of these are listed in a bullet format. And these are things that people are welcome to bring up if you think that they're issues that you're concerned about. Natural environment, air and water quality, land use, traffic, parking, noise, etc. A little bit more about what the alternatives that will be studied are. Right now, there are 3. There is the proposal, which is the demolition alternative, and that would demolish the existing structures and buildings on the site. There's also another alternative, which is historic preservation and potential future adaptive reuse. And then the third is no action. Would basically be continuing the current site conditions. Existing structures would remain, they'd be vacant, unutilized. All of these can be refined based on comments that we receive. So, there's a couple tips for commenting. If you can be specific, instead of saying, I don't like the project, I like the project, if you could give some details about why you do or you don't, or ideas about how you think things could be mitigated or reduce impacts. Whenever you can be more specific, it's very helpful. So tonight, you're invited to comment on, what should the EIS alternatives be? Are there other topics that the EIS should evaluate in addition to historic cultural? What do you think the potential impacts? What do you think the potential mitigation should be? And then are there permits and approvals that you think should be required? So we want to take some clarifying questions, if there are any, about the process tonight. Tonight is really to be meant to be listening. And that's what we're going to be doing, is hoping that we hear from you. Is there something that's been missed? Is there something you'd like to see more information on? And you can submit your questions through the Q&A window, and feel free to do that. If you, all of these questions are going to be captured, so we will have them, but try to focus on the process, and we'll see if we can answer those. And I see that there's one that's come up. Clarifying question: who makes the final permit decision? And that will be the city of Des Moines. Anything else? Oh, staff or city council? That would be for city council. So city council will make the decision.
Pam, I just wanted to clarify, the permit decision for the demolition permit is an administrative decision, and city council would be involved if there's any proposed future development or redevelopment on this site, any type of quasi judicial decision. There's a master plan requirement for any future development.
Oh, thank you very much, Denise, for that clarification. So everyone note that the decision is actually staff. And as Denise noted, there may be some input from council, but depends on the circumstances. So listen to Denise, she knows. It's the staff.
And that would be on the basis of the EIS analysis too.
Looks like you have another question.
I'm not sure what the question means. There was a SEPA checklist that was prepared by the applicant and submitted along with the demolition permit application, and that's available for review. And I'm not quite sure what the question is other than that.
Okay, thank you. And if anyone has other questions, we are running a little bit ahead of time, so we'll take a break, but maybe if there's a few clarifying questions. Oh, question, what is the proposed use? I think they're asking, was that completed as information submitted as part of the SEPA checklist?
Oh, I see. There is no proposed use for the site. The proposal is a demolition permit application, and the proposal is for the demolition of the structures. And that is all that's being requested right now. There's a question, there are a couple questions here I think will make for very good comments and questions that we would love to have submitted as part of the record. And I would ask each of these people to submit these formally. The first one is, what led the city to only have historic preservation at the moment? Why aren't there other initial scoping elements that should be considered? Is that only based on community input? And it is partially based on community input. And if there's something that you think is missing, this is the time to make that statement. And it's important to make that as part of the record. Somebody else is asking, when is a proposed use required? Again, that's another really good question. And I think, I'm recommending that you submit that as part of the record, so that can be answered in the EIS process.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for the questions that you've submitted thus far. As a reminder, I accidentally skipped over a slide, but there are many ways to give comment. So you can also do so by going to the project website. We'll share that URL a couple times. Thanks so much to our team member on tech support bringing us back. So as a reminder, you can give a comment through the online form. Those need to be submitted by August 25th by 4:30 p.m., as well as those can be submitted by mail to the city address. And we will post this information a couple times throughout the evening. And again, this information is available at the city website. Okay, We're going to take a 5-minute break now just to get our team ready for the public comment. As you've met, Denise is here, Pam, myself. We have tech support and a court reporter here to document all public comments. So as I mentioned, in attendance, it looks like we have about 35 people here, 15 who have pre-registered to give comment. Again, if you gave comment during the May scoping meeting, that information is reflected in the record, and as well as if you submitted any comments during that first scoping period, or you have as well during this month, all of those comments have been captured. You are welcome to give comment again tonight, but do know that that information is recorded and noted by the city. So again, about 15 people who pre-registered. We will start in alphabetical order by last name. First name will be Anderson. I believe we're ending with the last name Woods. So hopefully that will give you a kind of an indication of where you might end up. So as you see, we have a clock here. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back and do public comment. Thank you. Welcome back. If you'll just give our team a moment to reassemble. We have a couple questions that came in during the break. We'll see if we can answer some of those and then move into public comment.
We have a couple questions. One is a clarifying question about the prior unsuccessful offers plans for the Masonic home. Are they available in the public record? How could we learn more about them? We don't have any information that is available tonight. If that's something you want to have more information on, if you could please make that part of the public record and a question that can be addressed. Several other questions. What is proposed end use development for the property? Again, that's a great question to ask. Make it part of the record. And it's also going into asking questions about, how the city officials will determine the parameters used moving forward. What alternatives has the city considered for proposing to the developer in a public-private partnership? And a statement that all potential impacts should be considered, not just the demolition impacts. Those are all comments that would be appropriate to submit, and I do recommend that you submit them. Make them part of the record.
Okay, thank you, Pam. So we're now moving into the public comment part of the evening. As I said before, we have about 15 people pre-registered to give comment. If we work through those 15 names and I haven't called you, you may use the raise hand function once we get through everyone to give a 3-minute comment. And again, we'll take the 3-minute comment from each person who wishes to tonight, and then we will conclude the meeting once the last person has given their comment. So how this will work is we will give you the ability to unmute yourself. You'll need to unmute yourself first before you give your comment. You'll get an indication on your screen. You will have 3 minutes to speak. You'll see the timer on the screen to know where you are in your remarks. So please start by providing your name for the record if there's an organization you wish to identify. And then when those 3 minutes are up, we will move on to the next speaker. Again, this meeting is being recorded in accordance with city law and public records practices. Any comments that are made will become public information, and all public disclosure rules and regulations apply. And as a reminder, we ask everyone to be respectful of the public process, the team that's here tonight, and all of those who are participating in the public meeting. Okay, let's get started. So the first person that I'll be starting with will be Benjamin Anderson, who will be followed by Catherine Anderson, and then Robert Castro. So Benjamin, you have been unmuted and your time begins when you start speaking.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Benjamin Anderson. I'm from the Des Moines Theater Project. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. First of all, thank you for the informative presentation on this process. Some of this is new to me and many of the other people in the community, so I just want to thank you for facilitating this and walking us through what you have tonight. It's been very informative. There are a couple things I would like to say. One is that I understand personally the complex nature of a development project that is costly because of trying to save elements of an old structure. But I do think that in the instance of the landmark on the Sound, it's very important to myself and other members of the community that we take into account the historical significance of the building and also some of the great uses it could have in perpetuating the culture. So one thing I would like to put on the record is I think it's important that we not offer a demolition permit for this particular property without having a future use determined in the the plan. I feel like we should have with something so significant to the town, we should have an approved plan for the site before we allow the building to be demolished. That being said, I think there's also a lot of political will right now with myself and other people in the community for some version of a public/private endeavor, if that's required in order to save the building. So I comment further on that at some point, but I do think that just going on the record saying that, you know, if we allow this building to leave us now, it's a missed opportunity. And I think if we want a gathering place, even a portion of what this site becomes to be a gathering place where we can celebrate the historic and culture past of the area from the natives all the way forward, there's no better place than the landmark on the Sound to make that our community's home for doing those things. So thank you for taking the comments, and I would like to make myself available for any further discussions as we move forward.
Thank you, Benjamin. The next person I'm looking for is Kathleen Anderson. I am not seeing your name in the list of participants. If you've joined under a different name, could you use the raise hand button to let us know you're here? And then we will come back to you. So we have one attendee who said they're going to submit a written comment instead. So the next person I'm looking for is Kelly Crow, followed by Doreen Harper, and then I think Kathleen Scott. So Kelly Crow, are you with us? Okay, we're just going to keep moving. We'll try to come back to people. We'll make sure everyone gets an opportunity. So the next person I'm going to call on is Doreen Harper. Doreen, you are unmuted and your time begins when you start speaking.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I would just like to say, well, I echo what Ben also said. The public-private entrepreneurship sort of deal might be a great way to save the landmark. I've come across several possibilities that could make this thing a success, including the Lodge at St. Edward's, Hotel Elkhart, Manresa Castle, the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Lodge in Alabama, and there's a firm actually here in town or in Seattle, Daniels Real Estate, that did the Lodge at St. Edward's and has renovated historic properties and has won awards by doing so. So they're prestigious and they're well known, and I would just like to offer that out there, that maybe this conversation can go further in investigating, especially since our developer doesn't have an end use plan. And also I echo what Ben said about we need to have that end plan in our hands or in your hands to see what they plan on doing before any demolition happens. Otherwise, it's just a partial scope. We can end up with a vacant property, not doing anything for the community, or we could have a public-private enterprise that would benefit our community, the region. We have new things happening. We have a ferry going to Seattle. People are going to come in, people will visit. And I really feel like this could be a draw for the region. People traveling from SeaTac, people with ferry travel, coming up from Tacoma, coming down from Bellingham. It would be a draw. So I think it'd be a shame if this disappeared and was no longer a big footprint in our lives. A demo of this size and the amount of pollution and traffic and people that it could draw just with residents. The brand new school is over capacity. So I'm just, throwing stuff out there that we need to consider of the permanent, if we had permanent residents here, how can we support them? We don't even have a local grocery store. So lots of things we have to consider. And I really hope that our city decides not to issue that demo permit We don't have enough information to even actually do an educated decision on that.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Thank you, Doreen. Okay, the next person I am looking for, I think, is Kathleen Scott. Kathleen, we are going to allow you to talk. You'll need to unmute yourself and your time begins when you start speaking.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Scott, and I am commenting this evening regarding the proposed demolition permit to remove all structures located on 23660 Marineview Drive in the city of Des Moines, Washington. The 27-acre single existing tax parcel, formerly known as the Masonic Home Landmark of the Sound, is an iconic historic building that should be preserved for future generations to enjoy. I fully support the historic preservation and potential future adaptive reuse alternatives. As I'm reading the environment checklist, the following buildings are proposed for demolition: a building 129,000 square feet, one 19,000 square feet, a building 4,500 square feet, another building 2,500 square feet, and a building 25 square feet, plus an on-site water tower, a fountain, and associated landscape features. I'm expressing great concern with this project. This area will be a constant demolition zone for at least 3 months and probably longer. The Zenith area consists of single-family homes with the retirement home Judson Park to its north. Noise from the demolition equipment, demolition crews between the hours of 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. on weekdays, plus 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends, materially impact the residents living in this once quiet area. There are 3 driveways entering and leaving this property, 2 connected to Marineview Drive, 1 connected to South 240th. The addition of demolition trucks carrying debris from the site will add more congestion to our roads. Commuters during the week, school buses picking up and dropping off children, plus family visitors to Judson Park on the weekends, and residents leaving their homes will feel this immediately. Our roads will be more congested. Plus, where will the construction workers park their vehicles? Alternatives must be considered. Redevelopment plans have not been made public. Let's do the right thing and save the iconic building for future generations to enjoy.
Thank you. Just to confirm, we had got a little bit out of order, but we are going alphabetical order by last name. So thanks everyone. We will make sure everyone has the opportunity to provide comment. Okay, so the next 3 people I'm going to call on, we have Lloyd Little Jr., then Barbara McMichael, and then Sandra Mock. So if you will give me a moment. Lloyd Little Jr., we have allowed you to talk. You will have to unmute yourself and your time begins when you start speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Also, I just want to say George Pettibone will be speaking through my computer also when it's his turn.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for holding this meeting tonight. It's great to speak with you all in the community. Myself, Barbara, and George have started a grassroots community petition. We're just about to pass 1,400 signatures, and that's just over the last month. There is big public support for preserving landmark on the Sound. There's big public support opposing demolition. We're inviting some developer who doesn't live here to come in and destroy 100 years of our cultural heritage, wipe out 100-year-old growth trees. We want to see not only the cultural heritage study, but an environmental impact study that takes into account the 100-year-old growth trees. This is an era of climate change. Trees store tons of carbon, especially the old growth. Why are we wiping those out? They're also home to threatened species, bald eagles. So we want to see, it'd be great to have a professional biologist come in and study the area over a long period of time, because there's bald eagles that live there, Canadian geese. The developer has done a lot of projects in the Kent Valley, which used to be a home for Canadian geese. They used to cover the sky at night, but now all those wetlands have been wiped out. Why do government officials and developers keep having this policy of killing all the life around us just to make money. What does Des Moines get out of this? We get our heritage wiped out. We get our wildlife wiped out. We get our environment wiped out. What's the return on that? Okay, there's such thing as an intangible return too. Not against making money. I want to echo the previous speakers. You can make money with things like, you know, a lot of people have proposed cultural center, museum. You could do a winery. The developer owns a winery. Perhaps he's interested. If not, maybe we should look at a developer who does want to work with us, public-private cooperation. Let's find a win-win solution. Okay, it's possible. We can preserve our history, preserve the environment, preserve the wildlife, and make money, lots of money. No other city around here has architecture like that. That puts us world-class. Why are we going from world-class to just low class? Does that make any sense? It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, also, one of the environmental impact studies is recreation. That was a de facto city park for many years. People had picnics there, weddings, they walked their dogs. It was a very positive place for the community to meet. That's great for physical and mental wellness, and that's going to be taken away too. So please add those to the environmental impact statement. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. We will make sure to come back to you and unmute you so that George is able to give his comment as well. Okay, the next person is Barbara McMichael. Barbara, you've been unmuted. You'll need to unmute yourself and your time begins when you start speaking.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Barbara McMichael, 22810 Thunderbird Drive. And I do want to submit that question for the record if prior unsuccessful plans or offers on the property are available under public records. Thank you. I'm talking to support the historic preservation and potential adaptive reuse alternative for the Masonic home. I referenced a Seattle Times article that came out just this morning with new climate change projections that indicate how severe heat waves and high temperatures will become across the country. And in the spirit of think globally, act locally, I really want our group, our city, to consider the environmental impacts of this particular project. I want my city to take it very seriously, our responsibility to do what we can here in Des Moines. I'm sure our city's staff members understand the concept of embodied energy and recognize the immense amount of embodied energy represented by the Masonic home. Demolition of this structure would not only ignore that environmental investment, but also incur air pollution, noise pollution, ground tremors, heavy truck congestion, upsetting in any instance, but particularly egregious with a retirement home right next door, an elementary school a couple of blocks away. The home's demolition, furthermore, would place a huge burden on landfills. All of this runs counter to sustainability goals that have been set at many different levels of government. Over the last month, as Lloyd mentioned, I've been part of the effort to gather signatures for a petition that calls for preservation of the building. I've talked to hundreds of people, and in all of those conversations, hundreds of people, only 3 individuals wanted to see the building torn down. Everybody else I talked to wanted to preserve it, many of them emphatically. Many folks had significant personal memories of the place. They had loved ones who retired there. They worked there in many different capacities, perhaps, or they attended recitals or jazz festivals or haunted houses. I know City Council and staff have been advised not to have conversations about the Masonic home, but I want to alert you to the fact that there is widespread pride in and emotional attachment to that building and a tremendous desire to see the building repurposed in a way that can continue to be enjoyed and supported by the public. The Masonic home was dedicated in 1927 before our nation offered the safety nets of Social Security or Medicare. It addressed a growing problem at that time of how to take care of elders in need. When the Masons opened the home, they dedicated it, quote, in the service of love. This building has carried out that mission in all of its iterations, from housing the elderly to hosting weddings to the safekeeping of toys gathered for holiday toy drives. It is a splendid piece of architecture, and it is an embodiment of the love in this community. Demolition would have a significant negative impact on the culture of Des Moines. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, the next person that I'm looking for is Sandra Mock. then Rebecca Orton, and then we'll come back to George Pettibone. So again, if you're just joining us, we are working through a list of about 15 people. We're about halfway through. If you have not been able to give comment but wish to tonight, you can use get through names, you can use the raise hand function on your screen and we'll call on you. So we are looking for Sandra Mock. And Sandra, if you're here, we're not seeing you, so we just ask that you raise your hand and we'll come back to you. The next person that we're looking for is Rebecca Orton. And Rebecca, we're not seeing you either on the attendee list. If you're under a different name tonight, just raise your hand once we get through the last name and we'll call on anyone else. Okay, we're going to come back to George Pettibone, who I know is with Lloyd Little Jr. So I will be unmuting Lloyd again, and George, your time will begin when you start speaking.
Yep.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, fine. My name is George Pettibone. I live on the Zenith hillside here in Des Moines. I can see the big landmark on the sound every day of the week. I admired it when I bought my house. I enjoyed looking at it over and over again, hundreds of times. And I've gone through it a number of times. It is an epic, big, giant building. You can see it from Vashon Island. You can see it from the ferry boats. You can see it from every ship that goes in and out of the Tacoma Harbor. Every sailboat race on Thursday night, they'd look up and they can see this thing. You can see it from Ruston Way in Tacoma. It is so significant. I am pleased to say that there is lots and lots of interest. Everybody we talk to goes ahead and signs this petition, is very, very thankful. They seem to enjoy the idea of participating in a public and open forum. The COVID-19 has taken a lot of wind out of a lot of people's sails, but we need to have public and open meetings. It's very important. The structure is not to be demolished without a battle. I've been to San Diego, I've been to Coronado, I've sat and had lunch and dinner in the Hotel del Coronado, and I would defy you to go down there with any developer or any contractor of any size or shape and tell them he's going to destroy the Hotel del Coronado. You cannot go into Paris and tell them that you're going to tear down the Cathedral of Notre Dame just because it had a horrific $100 million fire. People don't tear down Notre Dame, they rebuild it. You can't go into London and tell me that the Blitz, 1941, 42, 43, which destroyed half of London, wasn't worth rebuilding. Everybody rebuilt their buildings in London. We don't have anything like this to replace it. There is nothing in White Center like this. There's nothing in Sumner like this. There's nothing in Algona like this. There's nothing in Pacific, period. This is the biggest thing here. You take away our building and we are White Center with a big bunch of sailboats sitting in a marina. Pardon me, but hey, I'm talking about keeping this thing. So if every general contractor knows that they have to fill out the SEPA report, the 14-page SEPA report is element that is missing here. This is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Nobody will tell us what he wants to build. This is against all of the SEPA requirements. Everything in there is missing. Go back and get the SEPA report and read it. It doesn't tell you what he plans on building. And this is unfortunately is against SEPA state law. I hope that we can all put their shoulder to the wheel and find a way of rebuilding and refurnishing this wonderful building. Thank you for your time. Look forward to having a great big building across the street.
Thank you, George, for your comment. Okay, the next person is Andrew Randall, who will be followed by Beverly Wright, Brian Snur, and then Edward Woods. Those are the last four registered people, and then we'll come back through and just make sure that everyone has had an opportunity. So Andrew Randall, you've been unmuted. Please double click to unmute yourself, and your time begins when you start speaking.
All right, thank you for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to say, I think that some of the things that are not considered, that have not been addressed so far in the SEPA checklist, or that has been put forth anyways, are air quality from the demolition of this massive building, the potential runoff that can result from destruction of this. The site is located along a hill. The hill then goes down into the Puget Sound. So there's runoff that could potentially impact the land that goes down towards the sound. There's runoff that could impact the marine wildlife that's nearby. I think another commenter mentioned the potential traffic impacts. There's also the potential to impact the King County Metro route that runs right past there. There's the potential to impact land use in the future, particularly if the applicant isn't willing to put forth a clear picture of what they want to develop. And then moving forward from that any additional development would then likely trigger a SEPA, a required SEPA, another environmental impact statement based on the SEPA checklist. So it makes no sense to me that there would be potentially a demolition permit approved for the demolition of a building that would then have to go through another SEPA checklist that would likely result in a finding of significance that would then trigger another environmental impact statement. The destruction of this building, of the Masonic home that I used to go to as a child, to carol for the elderly people that lived there, it would not only the destruction would potentially remove a building, but then there would be another environmental impact statement that needed to be completed that might not result in anything being built. So I just want to make sure that these are all part of the record. I'd also like to make sure that, as everybody else has said, this building is historic and significant to the city of Des Moines, to the community. Thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Andrew, for your comment. Okay, the next person on the list is Beverly Wright. Beverly, you can now unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start talking.
I cede my moments.
Okay, thank you, Beverly. Okay, the next person, last two people, we have Brian Snur and then Edward Woods. Brian, you can unmute yourself and your time begins when you start speaking.
All right, thank you. My name is Brian Snur. I'm a lifelong resident of Des Moines. I've owned a business in Des Moines, or my father has, since the 1960s. I still operate it today. I'm a member of the local Rotary Club, member of the Legacy Foundation, and I'm committed to this community, as are many people I associate with. Community history is a significant element of our culture in this town. And fortunately, the SEPA process in Washington requires that the city consider the impacts of any project on the historic and cultural preservation of a community. Mr. Pettibone's comments were right on point and expressed that this building in particular has been a visual, architectural, and artistic representation of our community for close to 100 years. And it shouldn't just be demolished without any plan or understanding of what the property be used for in the future. I oppose demolition. Our history is simply more valuable and important than allowing a property to demolished with developer not even having a plan for how it's going to be serving our community in the future. I do note, for a brief period of time, this was an event center, and it really showed with the Rotary Club. We had festivals there, wine festivals, and this building drew people to the building itself as a kind of major part of our culture and community. And I do think that it's financially viable, maybe difficult, but financially viable to preserve this structure for our community. We recently lost the Van Gaskin House. Thanks to Mr. Anderson and his group, we're saving our theater. But aside from these buildings, there's not much left of Des Moines' physical history. So I'm asking the city and the developer to give our history and culture primary consideration as you move forward and preserve this building, because once it's gone, it won't come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, our next speaker is Edward Woods. Edward, you have been unmuted. You'll have to double click to unmute yourself, and your time begins when you start speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name's Edward Woods. I'm the Grand Master of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington. I'm reading a statement regarding the support for the demolition application by Zenith Properties, LLC. To whom it may concern, this letter is provided to document the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington, reasons for and support of the proposed demolition of all existing structures located at 23660 Marine View Drive South. In the nearly 100 years since the construction of the former Masonic Retirement Center, the Masons have owned, operated, and maintained. In the early 2000s, the Masons began investigating potential redevelopment of the property. Following those investigations, the Masons determined their organization's interests were best served by offering the property for sale, with the condition that any redevelopment activities would need to rehabilitate and preserve the center. Following 15 years of studies, investigations, mothballed proposals, and the Masons' own intimate knowledge of the condition of the center, it became clear that what many may see as an asset on the outside is in fact a substantial liability once the actual interior and structure conditions of the building were investigated and the costs were obtained. The condition of the center has proven to be an insurmountable barrier to the repurposing of the property. Every potential buyer determined that the significant cost to bring the center up to code and then convert it to another use were not economically feasible. As a result of the significant deterioration of the building and the clear indication that there was no market for this kind of property, the Masons relisted the property for sale without conditions, which attracted many interested parties. In that process, the Masons wanted to identify an investor that could provide the greatest financial compensation and demonstrate that they have the background, abilities, and vision to shepherd the property for the next 100 years or more. In that regard, the Masons were very confident in the abilities of Zenith Properties, LLC, to be a good partner with the Des Moines community. The Masons feel the transfer of the property to Zenith Properties, LLC, and a proposed demolition of the existing buildings represent the greatest potential for a positive and successful future for the property and the community. On July 9th, 2019, the Masons applied for demolition of all existing structures on the property, which is assigned a permit number LU 2019-0032, and has since been transferred to the current property owner, Zenith Properties, LLC. While the Masons hold no title, deed, or other interest in the property, the Masons maintain their support for the proposed action under LUA 2019-0032 and support the demolition of the existing structures. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Okay, we have one person who is having some technical trouble, would like to give comment. We're going to give, just take a 1 minute break to assist that person, see if we can help them submit comment. If you have not given comment yet, but wish to do so, again, you can use the raise hand function here at the bottom of your screen, and we will call on people in the order that they appear. So just give us a moment. We're going to try to assist someone, and we will reconvene in just a second. Okay, great. I think we've been able to help someone get into the meetings. Thank you for your patience. So our last speaker is going to be Sandra Mock. Sandra, I am going to allow you to talk. You'll have to click your microphone to unmute yourself, and your 3 minutes begins as soon as you start speaking.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I remember when we first moved to this community and the Masonic home was opened up for different events, from fundraising events to just the Halloween, where the kids would go around inside the home for Halloween, collecting candy and playing games. And it truly had a great value to this community, and it added value to this community. And I think with that in mind, that the restoration and possibly developing a partnership really does need to be looked at, because it truly is a landmark on the Sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, this is the last call for public comments for this meeting. Again, you have the opportunity to submit written comments online or by mail to the city through August 25th. Last call, I'll give a couple seconds if you wish to raise your hand. And I'm seeing, okay, so Lloyd Little Jr., I see your hand raised. Do you have a clarifying question, or is there an additional person with you who wishes to give a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to just close out with one extra. I heard the person say about the runoff. If you pack in the high density housing there, you're going to get a lot of pollution that runs into the Sound. Washington State is trying to rehab the Sound, otherwise known as the Salish Sea, especially for the orcas. All the salmon are dying out there. So the orcas are dying because they don't have enough salmon. So that's another environmental impact we'd like to see studied and formally studied for this. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, a reminder, that's a comment that you can submit in written form as well for consideration. Okay, well, with that, we are going to close our evening. Thank you so much to all of you for being here this evening, being a part of this process, and your thoughtful comments that you gave. So a reminder, if there are other folks you know who are not able to join, they can give comments online or in written form through August 25th. Online comments need to be submitted by 4:30 p.m. And then the online forum will close for that. So with that, thank you so much again to all of you. We'll leave this slide up for a minute if you want to jot down information, and thank you for engaging with this project, and we hope you have a good evening.